Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Today we're going to be talking about how to keep stable nitrates and phosphates within your reef tank. Now last week I did mention that you should keep them stable, but I didn't go into any detail on the things that you should be doing either daily or weekly to ensure that they stay that way. So my goal for this video is to go through a list of probably 7 or 8 things that you should try or consider doing to keep them stable, but then I also want to talk about some things that you should avoid, that way you don't run into any issues. So with that said, the first thing that you can do and the easiest thing you can do to keep stable nitrates and phosphates is to dose them. This is going to be with an NO3 and PO4 supplement. I do sell something on my website, but there are other brands out there that you could use that do the exact same thing. Dosage might be different based on the potency, but either way, dosing them either by hand on a daily basis, once a week, every other day, a couple times a month. I mean, it's going to depend on your system, but you can either manually dose them or auto dose them. For me personally, here in the 300, the easiest thing for me to do is to auto dose them, spreading that dose out over a 24-hour period. That way it stays consistent and I can make any adjustments based on those readings and those tests. So dosing nitrates and phosphates, again, is the easiest and probably the cheapest route to go when it comes to dosing, or at least elevating your nitrates and phosphates. Now, another thing that you can consider doing is feeding a consistent amount of food every single day or every other day, again, depending on your system. But the point is, just like dosing, when it comes to feeding, is you want to be consistent. So if you have, say you're feeding dry food or pellet food, well, get a tablespoon or whatever amount that you're using, do that every single day, get a reading with your nitrates and phosphates based off of that and your current bio load, and then determine if you need to feed more or feed less. That would be a way to ensure stability. It's kind of like dosing, but you're just doing it with food, and it probably will be more expensive depending on how big your system is, how many fish you have, and how often you're feeding. But just like dosing, you can feed. It is a source of nitrates and phosphates. Now, it's not a direct source like a liquid, but again, those food elements will break down through the nitrogen cycle and eventually turn into nitrates and phosphates, which in turn will elevate it within your system. So let's see here. The third thing is be consistent when it comes to your water changes and have a consistent amount of water that you change. Now, for me personally, I'm kind of guilty of not doing this. I just do water changes when I kind of can fit it in the schedule and I think the system would benefit from one. Now, how do I determine if the system would benefit? Well, if my nitrates and phosphates might be a little elevated, or I just have a ton of detritus in the 300 that builds up. You guys have seen videos on that stuff. Or I just feel that the tank just needs to be cleaned. Either I need to clean the glass or clean the bottom of the tank, and it just needs to look better. That's when I will do a water change. Now, for you, it's probably best that if you're not selling coral and you're not shipping water out every day, or you just you don't have a bare bottom, you don't want to mess with cleaning it, you can go ahead and just pick a time. So most people do 10% weekly or 20% bi-weekly. That's pretty easy. Or if you want to go ahead and you want to go to a larger amount, which I don't recommend, you can always do one water change per month at like 40 or 50%. Not something I recommend you do, but essentially it is the same amount of water. It's just going to be at a bigger time. But again, I kind of avoid that. It's probably going to be more beneficial for stability wise if you do your water changes more often than to just do one large one at any given time. So yeah, just be consistent on your water changes. And the reason why I say this is that you want to be pulling out a consistent amount of nutrients because we're not adding nutrients with our water, we're just removing it. So if you find that you're really low on nitrates and phosphates, I definitely don't think you should be doing a water change. Maybe wait till they're a little elevated. That might be another reason on top of detritus or whatever else you got going on in the system to do a water change. But the point of the water change consistently is to remove those nutrients on a consistent schedule. That way you're not bottoming them out and having dino and all sorts of negative things that can happen when you have zero nitrates and phosphates. So next thing here is don't tinker with your skimmer or other equipment like a biopellet reactor. Now, a lot of us fiddle with our equipment. I'm guilty of it. I don't do it as much now because it is a system that I sell out of, so I don't necessarily mess with things as much as I used to. Back in the 125, you guys saw those videos, I was tinkering and doing all sorts of stuff and trying out biopellet reactors and trying out this and that was really fun, but my livelihood is depending on how stable this thing is, and well, I'm not going to go in there and go from really dry skim to really wet, or change all the lighting schedule on my refugium, or add a biopellet reactor when I don't need one. I'm not going to do things to the system, and I don't think you should be making any major changes or tinkering if you don't need to. If the system is doing well and the levels are where they should be, leave it alone. don't touch it. Don't be messing with anything, because you're just going to complicate things. And if something happens and you're messing with, say, 3 or 4 different things, let's just do an example. Say that you know, my nutrients are fine, but I want to change the lighting of my refugium just because I want to see it for whatever reason. I want to see it on. Well, I changed that, and then I changed the skimmer to wet skim, and then extend the lighting for another 4 hours, and I add a biopellet reactor. So if, say you do a bunch of different things at one time and something goes wrong, you can't exactly pinpoint what did that. Now, it's probably a combination of all, but the point is, don't be making changes or tinker with things if you don't need to, because they're just going to upset the system. And again, the key to stability is set it. As long as it's working, leave it the hell alone. So next thing here is you want to do is you want to test often. Now, for me personally, I like to dose in the evenings for nitrates and phosphates because I don't have my auto doser anymore. I actually got to get another pump for that. But so I like to dose my nitrates and phosphates in the afternoon or the evening, and then come back 24 hours later and test nitrates and phosphates around the same time. I haven't fed any food. There's no phytoplankton. There's nothing in the water column, so I'm going to get a pretty accurate reading of kind of what those nutrients have done over 24 hours and how they're impacting the system. So be consistent with your testing. If you're just starting out dosing nitrates and phosphates, test every single day and adjust your dose based on that. Understand there will be a point, and I've noticed this with the 300, that you will plateau. So there will be a point where you're dosing every single day and the levels seem to be going up and seem to be good. It will plateau, and then there will be a point, if you don't catch that plateau, that you will significantly bump up and you will have algae. I mean, it just happens. So be consistent with your testing along with your dosing, and you should be pretty good with that. Now, I did mention the testing within 24 hours. So that was I kind of put two together on that. So with that said, let's go to move down to some things that you should avoid. So as I mentioned before, big water changes. Massive water changes can remove a lot of nutrients. This is pretty good if you are having a nutrient issue. Then yeah, I've had clients in the past who have had tons and tons of algae, and the first thing I tell them to do is, hey, do a 30% water change every other day for the next week. You're going to remove a majority of those nutrients and kind of reset the system. Now, if you're having that kind of situation, then by all means, do the bigger water changes. But if you're just being consistent and your system is running as usual, you don't need to be doing 50% water changes. You don't need to be doing anything like that, because you're just, again, you're going to upset the system. If you want to do 10%, again, every week or every other week, 20%, something like that, that's totally fine. And again, if your nutrients are already low, you should probably avoid the water change altogether. Now, the next thing you want to do is, and this is something that I find that people do who go on vacation, is overfeeding before they leave, because they think their fish are going to starve, and then they're going to be gone for a couple weeks and the system is going to have no food. So you're going to go from an extreme with a lot of nutrients, and then you're going to go to not having any food. So you're going to go from really high to really low in a short period of time just because you're on vacation. And this was before auto feeders and stuff like that. And or you know, get a buddy to come do it. But the point is, if you're going to go on vacation, don't add a bunch of food because you want to get them fat and hold them over. Don't do that. And then, you know, don't be gone forever without somebody checking on the system. Best thing you can do is get an auto feeder, or what I like to do is just have a buddy come over, and you know, I have food set out in trays ready to go. Hey, there's freaking Monday. Just kind of like the pill tray. Just plop that in the tank and you're good to go. Make sure the skimmer's not overflowing, everything's good, and you know, everything's good with that. So the point is, don't overfeed, and then don't go away for a long time and not feed, because that fluctuation in high and low nutrients can be pretty devastating, especially to your SPS coral. The next thing here is don't make big adjustments on your skimmer, lighting, refugium. We talked about that a little bit briefly. You don't want to be changing drastically on any piece of equipment, especially if your system is good. Now, of course, if you have issues with your tank and you experience high levels of nitrates and phosphates, then yes, you can go from dry skim to wet skim. And I know somebody asked me to go in detail on that. We could talk about that in a later video. But yes, you can make that change. Or if your lighting isn't very long on your refugium and you have excess nutrients, yes, you can make that change. But I would definitely recommend that you do, if you're going to do both, do minor changes on both. But what I recommend you do is do one, make the change, see how it impacts the system, because you never know. You might bump up the refugium lighting, and that completely takes care of the extra nutrients. It just works. That macroalgae goes crazy, everything's good. Say you do that, and then you bump up to your wet skim, you might pull out too much too quickly, and then run into an issue of being low on nutrients. So you'll play that teeter-totter game, which I mentioned about going on vacation. feeding too much and coming back, that teeter-totter and nutrients can be pretty devastating to your coral. So if you're going to make an adjustment, just do one thing at a time, see how it impacts the system, and then go from there. Let's see what else I have here. The last method, the last thing that you shouldn't do is the screw it dosing method, which I proved in a previous video just because I had really low nutrients and I just said, let's just dump it in and see what happens. The screw it dosing method is not a good idea. I'm guilty of it many times because I'm like, oh, well, my nutrients are low. Let me just dump a few stuff in there. Or wait, I see a little bit of dino showing up on one of my frag tanks. Let me just dump some nitrates and phosphates in because I obviously haven't been taking care of it. The point is, the screw it dosing method for nitrates and phosphates and feeding without monitoring and testing is not a good idea. So the point of me saying that is if you're going to dose something, you should be testing for it. Definitely nitrates and phosphates when it comes to dosing because it doesn't take a lot to overdose, and then again that teeter-totter, which can be again extremely devastating to your SPS. So that's it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I tried to make them a little bit longer because you guys were asking for more in-depth videos. Now with the videos coming out every single day, I'm not going too in-depth in topics because I don't want them to go really long. But if you guys like the 10-minute or 15-minute videos like this, I have no problem making them. I mean, I could talk all day. It's just kind of something I do. So if you like this type of video, feel free to let me know. If you do like them under 5 minutes, cool. Some of you guys were saying that you were going to the bathroom and it worked out really well being under 5 minutes. Kudos to you on that. And then, but if you like them being longer for more information, I have no problem doing that. Either form or style works for me. So with that said, give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to support the channel, head over to FishOfHex.com. I do have nitrates and phosphates on sale there, plus coral 3D printing. You guys know the deal. So that's it. Peace.